This is a UK Power Networks podcast. If you want to learn more, head to our website and look for the Future Energy tab.
So hi everyone, thanks so much for taking the time to listen today. I'm Richard Jones, Communications and Engagement Officer at UK Power Networks. You're about to listen to a recent conversation I had with our members of our heat task force about their work to make low carbon heating a reality for customers. You'll hear from Zain Habib, Innovation Programme Manager, and Innovation Project Leads Jack McKellar, Rona Mitchell, and Ashita Anand. It's probably worth mentioning here at the very start that Ashita has recently moved to a different role in the industry. It's honestly been absolutely amazing working with Ashita over the last year, and we absolutely wish her all the best for the future. Without further ado, hope you enjoy. So Zain, I wanted to kick off with you first and get your views on where you think the industry is at the moment with heat. It seems to me like in the industry, over the last 2 to 3 years or so, it's really started to enter the mainstream.
It certainly has. And if you look back in time about 4 or 5 years ago, we were talking about renewable generation and electric vehicles as holding the key to tackling the climate change challenge. But now heat has truly come to the fore. The industry and the policymakers, they're actively thinking about ways on how to decarbonize heat. But I would say that with a bit of caution, because heat is still a nascent area and there's a lot of work that needs to be done. The challenge that lies ahead of us is basically very steep. And I say that based on some of the evidence that we've gathered at UK Power Networks. For example, one of our own scenarios for the forecast of the future, we expect the connection of about 700,000 heat pumps by 2030. And that's in comparison to about 20,000 heat pumps that we currently have installed on our network. So whatever way you look at it, it's not going to be straightforward. But it's also important to remember that it's not just gloom and doom altogether. I think that as an industry, we've shown up in the past and we've gained a lot of good experience through the decarbonization of other sectors. Now, again, let me use an example of UK Power Networks. We've been active in this space for about 10-15 years now. We started off with the decarbonization of electricity generation, and to date, we have connected about 7 gigawatts of renewable generation to our networks. Based on this, we then turned towards the decarbonization of transport. And by working closely with a number of key stakeholders across the sector, including the government, local authorities, charge point operators, energy suppliers, etc., we came up with a blueprint or a framework which we believe will enable the connection and uptake of about 4 million electric vehicles by 2030. And now we turn towards the next biggest challenge, which is the decarbonization of heat. And as I said, that about over the last couple of years, we've been extensively engaging with the industry, and not just with the manufacturers, suppliers, but also with the customers themselves to understand their needs and identify ways in which we can facilitate the switch to low carbon heating in the most cost effective and least disruptive manner for all our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've also probably seen a groundswell in just domestic consumers getting interested and passionate and understanding about low carbon heating, and that's going to make all the difference, won't it?
Yeah, you're quite right, Richard. Customers sit at the heart of this transition. Without them being on board, we would definitely fail as a nation to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Now, when we talk about decarbonization of heat, this will have the biggest impact on consumer lifestyle. But ironically, it is a sector that the customers, I believe, understand the least at this point of time. Yes, there have been some movements in helping consumers understand their low carbon heating systems a bit more, but I think there still remains a big gap. When we talk about engagement with customers, we need to understand that for heating, one size does not fit all. We need to be conscious and consider the differences between our different customers across our patch. Their different social demographics, their dynamics, their localities, etc. It all plays a role. And just taking this discussion a bit further, I want to talk about a few key aspects just to bring this to life and to help explain that this is a very complex problem from a consumer perspective. I mean, just talking about three core things at the heart of it, that's affordability, choice, and interaction. When we talk about affordability, this is not just about the upfront cost associated with replacing their existing, for example, gas boilers with heat pumps and all the installation that comes with it. We know that currently it costs quite a lot, but with time and within government incentives, we hope that through economies of scale, this is going to be much more competitive. Then we talk about and turn to the running costs. Again, currently there's a disparity between the fuel cost between gas and electricity, and that's based on the carbon intensity of the grid back in 2000s when electricity was perhaps a bigger pollutant than gas. And now things have changed. So we're also expecting the government to announce certain policies and take certain measures to address this underlying issue, which could then make some meaningful changes for the consumers to actually make that switch. The second key consideration for consumers is choice. Now, that is about what sort of technology can I take up on? Is it an air source heat pump? Is it a ground source heat pump? There's different varieties. It could be district heating as well. And it comes with a series of other questions in itself that one, do I have the space? Does it require a specific size or an allocation in my home? And since we're talking about homes, energy efficiency is one of the hot topics these days. To what extent does any home need energy efficiency upgrades to ensure that the home remains warm and people still maintain that level of comfort at the lowest possible cost? And the third and final point is around interaction. So we've been talking about different smart technology, smart homes, smart hubs. One question is that, is it intuitive and easy enough for everyone to use? Is it going to be inclusive? There are lots of customers we know today that who may not be tech savvy or digital focused. How do we move them along on the journey? So these are the three core questions, I believe, from the consumer side that we as an industry need to answer. And you'll hear about some of our projects later on from the team. And all of these projects have been scoped up and developed bearing in mind that how can we address one or more of these challenges. And to support the work that we're doing, we have not just been a lone ranger. In fact, we've been working with a number of different partners across the board. We've been engaging extensively with local authorities, local community energy groups who are our trusted partners to engage with customers on a domestic, individual level, door by door, to understand their specific needs, which we've then considered to incorporate in our thinking, in our direction forward, to ensure that we deliver meaningful and tangible outcomes for all our customers.
Yeah, absolutely, Zane. And the other thing, UK Power Networks, it covers such a wide area, all the way from, heavily urbanised central London to rural areas in the east and south of England. It's really important that we make it easy for people from all sorts of backgrounds, right?
Yeah, absolutely. With every demographic, we're quite aware of the diversity of the areas that we serve in terms of social demographics, economic backgrounds, etc. So we are very conscious that everything that we do is inclusive. It's just. That really is a driving principle for every single project that we're undertaking today. Otherwise, it would have been quite easy for us to do certain things which cost people a lot or cost us a lot. But the whole point of innovating and thinking about it in a creative way is to ensure that it comes at least disruption at a minimum cost to our consumers.
Absolutely, Zane. Thanks. Jack, that brings me to my next point that I wanted to cover. As Zane has already mentioned, improving customer experience, making it easy for them is absolutely vital if millions of people are going to switch to low carbon electric heating. One of the first projects that we are actually engaging directly with consumers is called High Compact. you want to tell us a little bit more about that? Tell me a bit about that, Jack.
Yep. So High Compact is an innovation project where we've partnered with gas network Wales and West Utilities. So that's a good opportunity to collaborate with an organisation we may not have done in the past. But with High Compact, we're looking to trial a hybrid boiler, which is a combination of an air source heat pump and a gas boiler. In the future, that gas boiler might be a hydrogen boiler. And it gives you the flexibility, and it also means that in the future, if renewables are not prevalent on the grid because it's not a sunny day, it's not windy, and so there might be more carbon on the grid, you could prioritise using the hybrid boiler or the gas boiler, whereas when there's high renewables on the network, you might prioritise using the electric air source heat pump.
And now we've actually installed these devices in consumers' homes, so we've live tested them and see how they performed in various situations. What's it been like for the consumers involved, and how has the trial evolved as it's gone on? Yeah,
so initially when we first started trialling it, it was just with the manufacturer's controls. There wasn't, I guess, the ease of use, but once we switched over to smart controls with our project partner, all the users were much more happier with it. They got a little bit more control about when they can schedule their heat pump to come on and when the gas boiler can come on. Some homes we found that there was a vibration issue, but we've sorted this out. So that was because the air source heat pump was working quite hard on very cold days. So we were able to resolve that with the manufacturer and retrofit a solution. So all the people now are very happy with the unit.
Yeah, and most importantly of all, they've saved emissions too, right? That's the main thing.
Yep. So some initial findings that we have is for a relatively mild day for a week in March, one of the homeowners was able to save about 43% of carbon compared to using a gas boiler. So that's pretty impressive. One of the other homes, similar temperature but slightly different build, and during that week they had manually interrupted the smart controls to increase the temperature, which meant the gas boiler had to work a little bit higher. But even in that scenario, they were able to save 20% of carbon for that week.
Yeah, and so what are the next steps then?
Yeah, through the project and working with Wales and West Utilities, we know that the Welsh Government is quite interested in this particular project and this technology. Because we've had quite good outcomes from the project, they're keen to expand the rollout of these type of hybrid boilers. We are doing a new project where we're trialling this hybrid unit in social housing, which is a great opportunity to make sure that people that might not be able to afford this type of technology can get involved, and they can also decarbonise their heating.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of supporting customers through that journey, Ashita, you've been leading our Community Heat project, which is aiming to help a community which is off gas grid transition away from fossil fuels. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the project?
Yeah, of course. So Community Heat is basically aiming to create this model community-led roadmap for rural communities so that they can transition to net zero. In the project, we've got about 600 households that are involved. And, we think community groups and working with those community groups is very important. So one of the community groups that we're actually working with is Avesco. And there's other local partners that are helping us do their research. They're gathering data. They're comparing different approaches for low carbon heating. And I think we've discussed this before also, that we know that, this one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work for our customers. So again, we're working hand in hand with that community to create that blueprint for low-carbon electric heating. There's also different possible low-carbon options for electric heating for the village. So the project is actually trying to research all of them.
And across the UK, right, there's like 4 million properties that aren't like Barkham, that are not on the gas network. This is a really passionate town then that's trying to fly the flag for all of them, right?
Yeah, I think Barkham is an exceptionally ambitious community. They have been very, very eager to move off of oil and find solutions that are low carbon. And I think that this type of ambition doesn't necessarily just stop at Barkham. We've got lots of local authorities across the UKPN patch that we know they've got this net zero by 2030 goal, and which is again quite ambitious. So we think that for all of those other local authorities that have these off-gas grid communities, something like community heat can be really helpful for them to help decarbonize. And so and specifically about Barkham, we've had lots of webinars. We've had engagement with the community through emails coming in, through specific workshops. We have a website set up, and it's been very active. So I think as far as the residents are concerned, they're very engaged with the project, and they're very eager to get started and participate. One of the examples I can give is we've been doing home surveys, and the goal was to achieve around 200 home surveys, and we've got so much interest that the only thing slowing us down is how quickly we can get to each of those residents.
Wow, that's a terrific result. I mean, this particular community is so interested and so passionate about low carbon heating, but it's not always the case, is it? I mean, lack of awareness, lack of education, that is at the moment probably one of the biggest barriers to low carbon heating, isn't it?
I think one of the key things we've found is that we have this, everybody thinks, as I was saying before, that we have this ambitious goal of a lot of these local authorities going net zero by 2030. And I think, and the other thing we've talked about is the lack of awareness is a huge challenge that we're seeing in the heat space. But I think projects like these are actually helping solve some of those issues that we're seeing, and we actually have engagement. And when we can go out into the community, and when we can basically, a lot of the things that we also did was a lot of door-to-door handing out of heat information packs and fuse upgrade flyers and that type of stuff has been really helpful in getting the community further engaged with the project and further understanding why the heat space, or what is the heat space in the first place, and why this type of change needs to happen.
Yeah, and one of the ways we're trying to increase that awareness is by building an online replica, a digital twin, right, of the town, so that people can view and see and understand their energy use, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be an interactive dashboard, and it's basically a digital twin, as you said, and it's going to allow different stakeholders like the local authorities or the residents to actually see what their heat usage is like, what carbon savings they could have if they were choosing to install something like a heat pump, and also understand what is the potential for using renewable energy sources in Barkham. So it's something that will be up on the website as well, and so they can interact, and they might have their own logins as well, so they can see what their particular house looks like in that scenario.
Great. And then finally, the kind of final outcome of the project then is to release a guide. You're writing the book. You're going to release the book for a community like Barkham, which is off-gas grid, to transition to net zero.
Ashida's autobiography.
Yes, it'll have her face on the cover and be co-signed. Sorry, we interrupted you.
Yeah, and sorry, I just want to say, I don't know if you guys can hear, there's some noise coming from outside the window, so I apologize if you guys can catch that. I'm sure my audio is catching it, but hopefully it's not coming to you guys. But yes, so let me start my answer. Yes, we are actually going to be writing the book, and that book is basically the blueprint for other off-gas grid communities to transition and achieve net zero. Our plan is to submit and release that book by the end of this year, so the end of 2021, so that other communities can pick up and start decarbonizing their own communities and using that blueprint to understand what that should look like for them.
Thanks, Ashita. And that brings us to something else I really wanted to cover today, which is looking to the future and ahead to forecasting the future of heat. Rona, you've been looking into that a lot recently with our Heat Street project. Do you want to take us through the purpose of the project?
Yes. The purpose of the Heat Street project was to do a much more detailed forecasting activity for what the uptake of low carbon technologies in our patch is likely to be. So we and other DNOs all do the DFES forecasts, but Heat Street looked specifically at heat, and not just low carbon heating, but energy efficiency technologies and what impact they might have on one another, because that previously hadn't really been looked at. And what we found was, even in a high hydrogen scenario, in all the scenarios we saw across our areas, energy efficiency technologies are likely to be rolled out. Not necessarily in huge numbers, that varied scenario to scenario, but if we are moving to a net zero compliant world where it will be more expensive to heat, kind of no matter what you do, because we won't have cheap natural gas, it makes more sense to install more energy efficiency technologies, so you need less heat to keep your house warm.
And the geography of it really is important here, right? Because depending on the area, whether it's a rural community or a heavily industrial, or whether there's lots of homes in a specific area, the different solutions that are going to work for heating are going to be vastly different, aren't they? Right.
Yeah, so the way we set it up was we did look at domestic as well as non-domestic properties, but I'll focus on domestic because there are 10 times as many homes as there are industrial spaces and businesses. So we considered different types of houses. So what the size was, what other features they had, were they flats, were they detached houses? So we looked at almost 2,000 different types of homes, and the modeling considered the different packages of energy efficiency technologies and low carbon heating. And the model kind of worked out what would be the best choice for those different types of homes. So when you put it all together, you get a varying forecast based on, different areas have different types of homes. So we found quite a lot of regional trends. As you might expect, we found that in areas where there's more off-gas grid homes, more heat pumps are expected.
And that means more electricity, right?
Yeah, more electricity in the off-gas grid zones. And also within London, we expect there to be more electrification and more district heating. District heating can actually be fed by many different types of technologies, but it is likely that in the future district heating will be powered by electricity as well.
Okay, and someone's going to have to fill me in here, because the difference between communal and district heating, one is larger than the other, but I'm not quite sure.
You're on the right track. Yeah, communal heating is just, a block of flats. You might have a central boiler or an air source heat pump, whereas district heating is that on a bigger scale, so it will span neighborhoods.
Okay, so it's the scale that really matters, but conceptually they are quite similar.
Same concept, but you might have more than one energy center on a district heat network.
Okay, thanks, Jack. So Rona, back to Heat Street. What are some of the more interesting things that have come out of the research for you?
Yeah, so we found a couple of interesting things in Heat Street that I certainly didn't know and I think aren't that well known across the industry. One of which is, for central London, pretty much in any scenario, and we did look at a scenario where there was plentiful hydrogen in the network at a reasonably low cost, kind of at the lower end of what all the forecasts have been, it's very likely that central London will still be electrified for their heating. That's because there's so many homes and businesses right next to each other. So we have like a high density of heat demand. So it's very likely that district heating will become a common way to heat homes in central London. And they most likely will be powered by heat pumps because they have a much higher efficiency than other low carbon heating technologies.
Thanks, Rona. And so I think what comes across most there, Zane, is how for different areas, as I said before, really different solutions are going to be required, and ultimately, it's all still quite early days, isn't it? What's coming up next for us in the heat space?
Well, as you've heard from the team, it's quite an exciting space. There's a lot more to do, so it's definitely going to keep us busy for months and years to come. But the three things that you could look forward to are, one, our new heat strategy. So we were actually the first electricity network to launch a standalone heat strategy back in March 2020. In fact, just before the first COVID lockdown. Seems like ages ago. But anyway, that strategy has served us very well over the last year and a half. We've learned a lot. We've run a number of projects. We've engaged extensively. And now we believe that it's time to refresh our strategy. We've been doing a lot of work in the background, and there's a bit more to do. But this is definitely something that I myself would be looking forward to as well. The second thing I would say is building upon our work on a number of different projects. You've heard about 3 of them. There are many more running in the background. We'll continue developing that research and also demonstrating the value proposition of all these solutions going forward. We've discussed that no one size fits all for all customers, so it's important that we continue working on different ends in different localities and regions, taking the customers and consumers along on the journey to ensure that decarbonization happens in a very holistic manner. And then finally, the third thing I would say is a lot of coordination, a lot of collaboration to deliver some tangible and meaningful outcomes for our customers, for the communities that we serve. And I think I have said that over and again in the webinars that we've held over the last year, but this really is a call for action, and I invite anyone who's listening to this podcast or heatcast that please get in touch with us, engage with us, because we believe that together we're much more stronger. We have a role to play collectively as an industry to educate our consumers, our residents, and our customers to decarbonize heat and to tackle the climate change challenge together.
Thanks so much, Zain. I think that's probably long enough for today, although this is an extremely complex issue and we could all, of course, go on and continue speaking about it, and I'm sure we will in the future. Thank you for your time. It was really, really great to hear from you. Thanks, Zain.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rona.
Bye, Richard.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you all for taking the time to listen to our podcast today. I really appreciate it if you've made it this far, all the way to the end. Congratulations. We are interested in doing more podcasts, but we want to make sure that it's the right way to engage with you. If you like this podcast, please let us know. Feel free to comment on social media or visit our website at innovation.ukpowernetworks.co.uk. You can also email us at innovation@ukpowernetworks.co.uk. We're really interested in hearing your views, so please do get in touch. Have a great day.